Hi, folks. Democrats are out here again treating delusion like it's their religion. Only difference is their miracles involve turning taxpayer money into smoke. See, today we're talking about New York's own Zohran Mamdani explaining socialism like it's a group project where only the lazy kids get an A. He says the wealth of the rich will be felt in the pockets of the poor. Yeah, because that's where his hands are going to be. Joke's on you. Have fun with that one, New York City. And on the other side of the coast, the communism is felt in the laughter. That is the Freemason building where Disney's own Jimmy Kimmel films insist there's no chaos going on in Portland, Chicago, or LA. Which is technically true if you're looking at Los Angeles from your gated mansion and squint hard enough to blur out all the chaos happening in our city. Anyway, here's Kimmel's genius monologue.
Antifa is just short for anti-fascist. It's not a club you can join. There are no membership dues, but they have matching signs. Okay, well, I guess we better round up these domestic terrorists, too. They look pretty matching to me. Listen, I'm going to tell you this. Spread it around. There's no chaos in Portland. None. There is no chaos in Chicago. There was no chaos in Los Angeles. They're pretending there's chaos as a pretense for a military takeover. But I'm open-minded. If there is chaos in these cities Trump calls hellholes, let's see it and decide if something needs to be done about it.
Jimmy Kimmel's right. There's absolutely no chaos in any of the cities he mentioned. That's why the video playing next to me is just an optical illusion, folks. A friendly neighborhood Marxist skirmish in Portland's peaceful protest district. What you're witnessing isn't chaos, of course. It's just a light reenactment of what chaos would look like if this were actual reality in Chicago. Hey, that's the safest city in America. That's why I saw over 600 homicides in 2024 alone, rivaling war zone statistics. As we all know, that historically indicates stability, not disorder. Now, all sarcasm aside, folks, what's especially ironic is how Kimmel tries to downplay Antifa's existence by mocking Trump supporters for having matching signs at a rally, calling them domestic terrorists for showing up to a rally that's, actually organized. Those signs he shows, they're paid for, coordinated, and part of a legitimate political movement made up of registered Republicans. Meanwhile, Antifa, whom he insists isn't real, manages to show up in identical black bloc uniforms, carrying matching banners and torching buildings in synchronized harmony, which, according to Jimmy's own visual analogy, is exactly how a political movement operates. Does he even think before saying this stuff? Like, how do you have a team of 30 writers and still fail basic logic? Either they're underestimating their audience or they're just too dumb, or worse, too dishonest to admit what's obvious to everyone outside the late-night echo chamber. This isn't comedy anymore, folks. It's propaganda disguised as entertainment, numbing people into believing the collapse of public order is just a Republican talking point, which, for anybody with a pair of eyes and ears, it's not. And speaking of eyes and ears, we're about to inflict some punishment on yours because here comes Kamala Harris with another drunken rant.
They're experiencing what they've coined climate anxiety.
What?
Which is their fear that because of changing and extreme weather, that the future of their lives is very much at stake. My goddaughter, who's a junior in college right now, was crying to me just 2 days ago, worried about what is the world going to be for me, Auntie, she said, when I want to have kids. Should I even be thinking about having children? That's on top of unaffordable, not for her, but for so many in that generation. They don't aspire to own a home. They don't believe it's within their reach.
And the blame for all of this falls squarely on your shoulders, Madam Former Vice President, and on the shoulders of your party, for not only creating the very anxiety-inducing narrative that leaves young people paralyzed with fear, but for building the over-regulated, overtaxed system that makes it nearly impossible for them to own anything. Democrats have engineered an economy of despair and are now pretending to mourn the results. They want you stuck in a perpetual state of crisis, folks. That's the reality. They want you owning nothing, believing the future is doomed, because dependence on the state is the ultimate goal, not the byproduct. This isn't about compassion, by the way, everything she's saying here. It's all about control. Kamala talks about climate anxiety as if she's comforting the victims, when in reality, she's one of the architects of that fear. Because fear justifies the next power grab. Fear justifies the erosion of your rights under the guise of saving the planet. That's straight from the Marxist-Leninist playbook. Keep people scared, keep them obedient, but that state of fear is the opposite of godliness, folks. It's straight up demonic. Fear comes from the devil. Hope, liberty, and righteousness come from God. Never forget that. So when leaders like Kamala preach despair, it isn't empathy. It's a ritual of control meant to make you surrender faith, freedom, and self-determination to them. So don't let them pull you into it. Always reject this. And always place your faith in God. And never on scumbags like Gavin Newsom.
And increasingly, this president appears unhinged, unmoored by reality and facts. Seems listless. He seems, dare I say, in decline, cognitively and, dare I say, forgive me, perhaps unfair, physically. And these are just rantings of someone that needs an intervention, needs some help, needs to be stabilized.
Now, for anybody wondering, that rant wasn't from a year and a half ago when Biden was still in office and very clearly suffering from everything Gavin Newsom just described. It was from now, yesterday, in fact. And somehow Newsom thinks he can project all that onto Trump. Yes, the same Gavin Newsom who spent years defending Biden, insisting that his visible decline was a right-wing conspiracy theory. Meanwhile, the rest of us watched it unfold on live TV in real time. The vacant stares, the incoherent sentences, the confusion on stage. It got so bad, folks. Obama had to literally escort Biden off stage at a fundraiser filled with Hollywood elites because he just stood there frozen. That's not partisanship, folks. That's observable reality. But Democrats have mastered the art of denial through projection. They ignore what's happening in front of their eyes, our eyes, and try to graft their own failures onto their opponents. The irony here is that Trump is the most visibly active man in American politics, doing multi-hour rallies, taking questions, meeting world leaders, bouncing between D.C., New York, and Tel Aviv, often in the same week. Sure, he misspeaks, sometimes goes off script, but that's normal human variance, not cognitive decline. The difference is Trump has off days, Biden had an off presidency. And Newsom's attempt to gaslight voters into believing otherwise perfectly captures the current Democrat strategy. Deny their own decay, deny the truth, and just put plain trust that their media echo chamber will keep enough people distracted or perhaps too afraid to notice the big lie. And speaking of lies, Takia enjoyer Zohran Mamdani recently took part in a New York City mayoral debate, and let's just say that things went off the rails really quickly.
Working with unions and working class New Yorkers to finally raise taxes.
You know it's going to be a good debate when the socialist in the room takes less than 5 minutes to start talking about how he's going to confiscate your money to fund his next pet project. That's Zohran Mamdani for you, folks, openly promising to work with New Yorkers to finally raise taxes, as if that's some kind of heroic act of public service. This is where Democrats think they win people over by convincing hardworking Americans that they should celebrate paying more so government can keep mismanaging everything they touch. Look, I'm in California, not in New York, but trust me, the Democrat tax burden here already sits near 60 to 65% when you stack federal, state, county taxes and all the hidden fees together. And for what? The roads crumbling, homelessness exploding, and the billions supposedly allocated to solutions just vanishing? California alone has spent over $25 billion on homelessness in the past 5 years with virtually no improvement. Just look at Shangri-La Step Up. That scandal that happened here in Los Angeles, $150 million to convert motels into housing, and the money evaporated in a month. Not a single functioning project to show for it. So before Mamdani tells us how he's going to take more of our money, maybe he should explain what he's done with the money already taken. Because people like me, and like most Americans, bust our asses to earn what we have. We don't want to get fleeced by bureaucrats who think redistribution means robbing us blind while the system keeps burning. At some point, it isn't about taxation anymore. This is spiritual theft. We're not just talking dollars. They're not just taking dollars. They're stealing your life energy, folks.
Candidate in the Democratic primary for him to set foot in a mosque. He had more than 10 years, and he couldn't name a single mosque at the last debate we had that he visited.
What?
And what Muslims want in this city is what every community wants and deserves. They want equality, and they want respect. And it took me to get you to even see those Muslims as part of this city. And that, frankly, is something that is shameful and is why so many New Yorkers have lost faith in this politics.
Yeah, except, that is totally false. I worked with the Muslim community for many years.
Name a single mosque you went to when you were the governor. Can you name a single mosque you went to in 10 years?
Before you were ever here.
Before I was here,
before you were even in state government. I worked with the Muslim community. Yeah. Imams presided over State of the States. We worked in religious working groups, tolerance groups, anti-Semitic groups, etc.
All right, gentlemen.
Candidate in the Democratic primary.
Is that really the policy debate Democrats in New York care about now? The last time a mayoral candidate stepped into a mosque? That's their metric for leadership? When was the last time anyone asked a candidate when they last went to a church? You know what would happen, actually, if somebody were asked that in a debate like this? If anyone dared to ask that, the left would explode. Democrats would be screaming, Christian nationalism! So what's the real purpose of this question? It's not about faith, it's about pandering. Mamdani's trying to score a cheap gotcha moment that plays on two emotional levers within the modern Democrat base. First, it appeals to Muslims who've been told falsely that they're marginalized and unequal, even though American Muslims enjoy the same rights and protections as every American citizen. Second, it feeds the guilt complex of the progressive left, especially the white liberal arts crowd that thinks converting to Islam is the latest form of social enlightenment. It's identity politics meets religious virtue signaling, and it's completely divorced from the actual concerns of New Yorkers. There are over 8 million people in that city struggling with crime, housing, and taxes, but sure, let's debate who last visited a mosque. It's absurd. New York has a long, complicated history with Islam, by the way, but none of that changes the fact that a mayor's job is to manage a city, not audition for Interfaith Influencer of the Year. Every community deserves respect, yes, but respect isn't a photo op, it's competent governance. Reducing leadership to token gestures like mosque visits doesn't build unity, it just trivializes it. What's next? Disqualifying candidates based on the last time they got an Ozempic shot? This is what happens when symbolism becomes substance. Politics turns into theater, and the audience stops believing that any of this crap is real or serves them in any sort of way, because it doesn't.
I would be the mayor of this entire city, and that means ensuring that the wealth that we generate in this city is also wealth that every single New Yorker can actually feel in their pockets. Because what we have today is a system that has generated the most wealth in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, where 1 in 4 of our neighbors are living in poverty. That's unacceptable. We can't look at 500,000 kids hungry every single night as just the cost of doing business in this city. That's something we have to actually change. And I'm going to do that by fighting for my neighbors in Queens that I've come to know, who are not only the ones who own teapots and toy stores, who own diners and dry cleaners, but also the ones who work there. Because right now, all of them are being pushed out of this city by corporate greed, by private equity, and by a politics that refuses to fight for them. I will finally deliver that politics. Follow-up. I would be the mayor of this entire city.
Kamala Harris called and she wants her word salad back. Seriously, though, it's insane that Johnny can stand on stage and openly talk about making sure that wealth is felt in everyone's pockets without anyone calling it what it is, straight up communist rhetoric. This isn't progressivism, folks. It's the same recycled Marxist fantasy that says the state should reach into your wallet because it knows better than you do at how to spend your money. The idea that you don't have the right to keep what you earn, to build a legacy for your kids, or to pass down what you worked your whole life for, that's not compassion, that's control. That's redistribution of wealth rhetoric. That's Marxist, it's communist. And it's especially ironic coming from a man who claims he's going to fix poverty through the state, when the state is the great reason most of these problems exist. The government doesn't create wealth, folks. It creates absolutely nothing. It consumes everything. Its job is to protect your rights, pave the roads, and fund the police and military so you're safe, not to decide who deserves the fruits of your labor. For most of American history, charity and community handled those responsibilities far better than any government bureaucracy ever could. Churches, local organizations, and civic institutions cared for the poor long before Washington ever got involved. And they did it without destroying incentive, family structure, or faith in the process. What Mamdani's selling here isn't equality. It's dependency. Dependency on the state. And dependency is the enemy of liberty, because once the state convinces you, it can feed you, it can also convince you that it can starve you. And needless to say, that's not justice. That's tyranny dressed up in moral language. It's actually insane that this recycled Marxist rhetoric, hundreds of years old and drenched in failure, is still being paraded around as some kind of fresh, enlightened idea. This is an ideology that has failed everywhere it's been tried, without exception. In China, for example, it led to the deaths of more than 45 million people under Mao's Great Leap Forward. In the Soviet Union, Stalin's purges and forced collectivization wiped out another 20 million people. Cambodia under Pol Pot, North Korea under Kim Il-sung, Venezuela under Chavez. Every single time, the same script plays out. Mass suffering, centralized control, and the destruction of human dignity in the name of equality. Yet in America, we don't talk about these atrocities because the very people who romanticize these ideologies now control our schools, our universities, and funny enough, much of our media. They've whitewashed history, rewriting evil as economic justice and tyranny as progress. And that's how someone like Mamdani gets a platform to preach theft as some sort of compassion, because we've forgotten what happens when people start believing the state is God. So make no mistake, folks, this alliance between socialism and religious authoritarianism has existed before. In Iran, Marxists joined forces with Islamists to topple the Shah, only to be executed once the new theocracy took power. In China, the Communist Party replaced faith with worship of the state itself. The pattern is always the same. Use moral outrage to seize power, then erase the very morality that justified it. So the question we should all be asking is this: how long before that same pattern repeats itself here in America? How long before this new socialism stops pretending to help the poor and starts demanding your obedience by any means? Because if history teaches us anything, it's that the moment the state tells you it can solve all of your problems, it's already planning to own your soul. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.